So I am incredibly frustrated. And I think we are being hoisted on our own petard, so to say. We do not see how pervasive and corruptive the idea of separation is and how it influences everything that we're talking and saying and thinking about climate change and the crisis, the meta crisis that we're in, and how it blinds us to looking at solutions. So I'm going to read some things from an article that really prompted this way of thinking. So bear with me for a little bit. So the article starts out, and this is the frame of where we are and where we're at. July 2023 was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth, according to the World Meteorological Organization, with the Atlantic Ocean near Florida measuring 101.1 degrees, and that's astounding. Likely the highest ocean temperature ever recorded anywhere in the world. Canadian wildfires burned nearly 46 million acres over the summer, and Maui's August wildfires were the deadliest fires in the United States over a century. So it's getting hot, folks, and that's the nugget of the crisis. And more on that later. I'm going to just hold it there. So this group is focused on listening to communities on the front lines of climate change, addressing how the crisis affects marginalized groups, BIPOC communities, low-income communities, and immigrant communities who are disproportionately impacted by climate change and typically have the fewest resources to mitigate it, according to numerous sources, including the World Health Organization. And that is hokum, folks. That is a mirage that is keeping us from understanding and seeing what's really happening. So I want to dissect that a little bit. So we're listening to the people who are affected by climate change. That's a good thing. We should know that people are having problems, right? Not a problem with that. However, understanding or feeling, cross out understanding. However, believing that these folks have absolutely no resources to deal with it is hokum, is a mirage, is an illusion, is incredibly disingenuous and totally misunderstands the problem. So we are standing out here, us white, privileged white folks standing out here in the northern, western hemisphere saying, we're going to help you guys, right? That's kind of the attitude. You guys are having such a hard time. Let's see what we can do about it. And that is such BS. Now it sounds good. It sounds nice. It sounds compassionate, but it doesn't do crap. It is not addressing the problem. It is talking about it. It is looking at the results of the problem and trying to mitigate the results, but it's not looking at the issues at all. And in some very profound ways, which I'm going to get to in just a few minutes. So it's followed by a statement by a person who says, no one role in our ecosystem can tackle climate justice. I have a problem. I really do. I have a problem with climate justice. It's a separatist approach to things. It is saying that some people are having a harder time than other people. Now, on the surface, that looks like a reasonable statement, doesn't it? Because it's true. Some people are having a harder time. Those people who are inundated by water and flooding are having a harder time than people who are not inundated by flooding. But that's not the point. The point is our whole planet is warming. That affects every single one of us, yes, in different ways. But that is the issue. Not that some people have floods and some people don't. And I'm going to address that in a minute, because those are things that actually we can do something about, as amazing as that sounds. So this is the solving statement. Organizations working together instead of in silos will promote exponential results. And that is a true statement, but it's applied in a wrong way. So they go on to say, we don't need to be arguing about whether marching is the best way to advance climate justice or whether it's working at the legislative level. We really need all those things. We do really need all those things. But marching and legislative issues are not solving the problem. Now legislative issues can help support the ability to solve the problem, but they're not actually needed to solve the problem. They are facilitating. Yes, they're not making it happen. They are making it easier to happen. True, but they're not making it happen. So these are all marching in the streets and dealing with laws and changing laws are not really addressing the problem. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be done. Marching makes us feel good. It makes a statement. It lets people know the numbers of people who care. Those are not bad things. Legislative things actually can be very supportive and really helpful and can make things move along faster, but they're not actually solving the problem. They're several steps away from solving. And we're getting caught in those things instead of doing the actual work. And I kind of feel that it's so blasted urgent right now that if we just did the work, those other things would take care of themselves. That's where I'm stuck on this climate justice piece, because it's separating out the effects of one group on another and still not really dealing with the problem. If we actually dealt with the problem, then it would mitigate it for everybody. And it gives people incredible agency. You don't have to be rich to do any of this stuff. You don't have to have a graduate degree. You don't have to have anything to really make an impact on climate. And dealing not only with climate, with biodiversity, which is just an unspoken issue that people aren't really talking about. But it's biodiversity that helps us manage climate. I want you to hear that. It is biodiversity that helps us manage climate. This is a whole system issue. Every part is interdependent. You can't just do part of it. You got to do the whole thing. And it's possible. And it's not expensive. And you can do it. You listener, you person out there can do it, just like I can do it too. Everybody can do it. It doesn't take money so much as it takes time and physical effort, which we all have. So the solution for this group a couple of years ago was to adopt a shared theme of climate-forced displacement, with each organization approaching the theme from their unique approach. Wonderful. Except that the enforced displacement is really a symptom. It's not a cause. And yes, it's going to have to be addressed because there's going to be a lot of that no matter what we do. I think that's true. But it's not addressing the cause. It's not making it more possible for people to stay in place, which I think is possible if we address this in a really large way, which is where the governments kind of come in. But individuals can do it. They don't need the government. The government just would push it along faster. That's all. So what am I talking about? What is the solution to climate change? I mean, there isn't a solution. This is a meta crisis. There's tons of things that need to change, but the big piece for life as we currently know it, to have the time to adapt to the changes that are now beyond our control, has to do with heat. And the planet has a system for cooling itself. that has worked marvelously for millions, maybe even billions of years. It's been around a long time. And it is called the biotic pump. And I absolutely love that term because it talks to our new understanding of the connections of things that we have not really understood before. So the biotic pump is the process by which the earth cools itself. Now, most of us are familiar with the water cycle. We learned about that in school, that water evaporates from the ocean, it goes into clouds, the clouds come over on land and rain, right? It's true. That is maybe 40% of the rainfall we get. The larger percentage of rainfall that happens is through the biotic pump. And the biotic pump is a bit more complex. It has to do with the fact that water is taken up by plants, and the plants evaporate. No, use evapotranspiration. I hate that word. It just seems backwards to me. Evapotranspiration is the word that talks about the fact that plants take up water and then release water vapor through their leaves, which goes up into clouds. Now, this happens inland. And what goes up into clouds, those clouds go along, and in a little while, they rain on other plants, which do the same thing. And when they evapotranspire into the clouds, they move along and they rain, and it does the same thing. So it's an inland cycle. And in order for that cycle to be functional, you have to have healthy earth. You have to have live soil, soil that can hold water. When the soil holds the water it gets, then the plants can take it up and evapotranspire that water vapor so that it can move along. In order for plants to do that, they have to be a complete ecosystem. So it's not just a couple of plants. It's not just a couple of trees. It's a forest. And a forest means all those species together make that evapotranspiration possible. For a forest to survive, you need all of its members, not only plants, but insects and reptiles and mammals. Everybody together makes that all possible. So, in order for us to facilitate the biotic pump, there are real, actual things that you and I can do. So there are several parts of this, and we can impact each of those parts given our capacity, interest, disposition, and capability. The first is healthy soil. There is nothing to prevent anyone on earth from making soil more healthy. It is the simple act of compost, putting back what you take, what you don't use from what you've taken, basically. Putting waste, what we call waste, back into the soil so that the soil can feed itself, be fed. That's how we feed the life in the soil. The soil holds about 2/3 of all the life on the planet. We are starving it. We are withholding from it the food it needs, which is what we can't use. That also means that everything that we make should be food for somebody else. So when we make things like plastics, it is food for very, 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 very small part of this ecosystem. There are bacteria that eat plastic. They have been born out of necessity. There are not quite enough of them at this point. So we can only create as much plastic as can be eaten. The rest of it should never come into existence. So healthy soil needs food. And we have, every person has the capacity to give soil the food it needs. Okay, so that's the start of our agency. We can do that. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's icky. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but that's something you can do right now, today, starting tomorrow. Save everything you don't eat on your plate, everything you want to throw out when you're making dinner or breakfast or lunch. Put that in a place and put it back into the soil. Learn how to compost. It's not just as easy as burying your garbage, although that would be, frankly, better than not burying it. But understanding how to do compost, it's not a difficult thing. It doesn't take it. You can just make a pile, for heaven's sakes. You need nothing, no physical equipment at all. Yeah, maybe something to turn it. Okay, so I'll give you a shovel or a fork, but so little. Everybody can do that. So composting is the first piece. But there are other things you can do. The life in the soil consists of, and I hope I remember all four basic categories. So nematodes, protozoans, bacteria, and fungi. Those are the four things that live in the soil. We can actually add those to dirt or to depleted soils to help them grow. This is a little more dicey. Not everybody can really do this. You have to have a little training. You have to have a little, some equipment, a microscope to be able to see what's there and how it changes and all of that. So that's kind of a step away. So I'm not suggesting that people run out and do that, although if you're interested in it, go for it. The other thing we can do, however, is a thing called biochar, which is something you can make in your fireplace or in a small fire pit using a couple of tin cans. So this is actually not very expensive either. Doesn't require any extra special equipment. Tin cans are not that expensive or difficult to find. And when biochar is made, that's a way to get rid of the more woody things that are more difficult to compost. Large sticks, stumps, old furniture, tree limbs, fallen trees, all that kind of stuff can be biochar. So biochar is a process created by South American Indians many thousands of years ago that instead of burning it up, chars it. So it is burned to charcoal, sort of, not quite that hard. And char, biochar, is a very porous material, which means it has lots of little holes in it, and those holes hold water and nutrition. So if you are interested in making biochar as an additive to your soil, you can easily do that. And I have lots of videos on that at my YouTube channel at Bridge to Partnership. Biochar is charged with compost tea and put back into the soil. So it does a bunch of things. It aerates the soil, which makes it easier for nematodes and others to work through it. It holds nutrients and it holds water. It is also a carbon sink. And in some places now is being used as a way to sink carbon. So if you're looking for carbon credits, you can do this. You can create biochar and put it on agricultural land and get credit for it. So it's got a little money behind it at this point in time, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it's movement. So we talked about making soil healthier in three specific ways: through compost, through the addition of bacteria, nematodes, fungus, and protozoan, or through the use of biochar. Both compost and biochar are within everybody's capacity. There is no human being on earth who cannot do this. For heaven's sakes, South American Indians did it with no technology at all. It's just not totally burning refuse you would otherwise put in the landfill. okay? These are not rocket science things, folks, but it does really make the biotic pump work. That's the point. Okay, so now you've got a healthy soil. There's another little piece of this, though, because while the soil can hold water, sometimes you get more water than the soil can hold immediately, right? We get a lot of rain, and right now we're getting a lot of rain at a lot of times in a lot of places that we didn't used to get it. So we need to manage that. We need to understand how to use it, and getting rid of it is not the proper approach, but it is what we're doing. So we try and get rid of that water instead of creating pools for it to stay. You want that soil to have water. So if you create pools, if you design your landscape so that the water that wants to come down is slowed in leaving, slowed enough to go into the soil, now you're recharging the underground water streams, underground water, aquifers, and the streams that used to be there that are all dried up. It's the way rivers happen. This is what makes rivers work, is this water that's in the soil percolates through and gradually goes through, follows the contours of the land to end up in the streams. By then it's filtered and all clean. And that's what keeps those rivers running. So by doing this, you are really supporting water everywhere, water where you are in the soil and water in the streams around you, as well as the ability of the plants who are planted on this land to evapotranspire. Now there's a fourth thing. So we're improving soil, we're adding biochar, we're redesigning the land so that it holds water. So we've got 3 pieces of this, 2 really, all of which we can do. You don't need permission. You don't need money. You need a little skill to redesign land. Now that's true. It's not something that you can just like willy-nilly do, but if you just follow the natural contours, or if you don't have natural contours, if you create contours so that the water will puddle, and so that excess water is directed toward trees, it's a little bit of work, and it requires a little more understanding than compost, but it's doable. It's something that you can do on the plot of land that you have control over, or that you could partner with your neighbors to maybe create it in the neighborhood. What a thought. So that water stays with you instead of leaves, that you slow it down in every way you can think of so that it has time to do its job, that it's not just disappearing when you get it. And this is really important because by and large, most places, most, not all, most places get more water than they need. The trouble is we don't keep it around. So when we're not getting water, we're starving for it and we desperately need it and there's no place to get it. That's when we want to import it from other places that have it, instead of learning to keep the water we have. And the fourth piece is really magical. So now that you have healthy soil, which is always a prerequisite, you have to do that first before you do anything else, you can replant original plants. Now, this is where it can get pricey. If you're going to buy those plants, it's going to cost you money. It's also going to take some time and some labor to plant them. So this is a little more difficult. It takes a little more energy, a little more space, a little more commitment, but it's still doable. And it's something that you can do if you want to. It's not hard for an individual person to do this. You can learn, you can ask questions, discover what the original plants were, find places that still have them, and plant them in your backyard if you have enough space. And it doesn't take a lot of space. It takes as much as 6 parking spaces. So go outside and look at that. Put 3 cars in front of your house and then 3 cars next to it. That's not a lot of space. Many of us have backyards of that size. So you can plant a mini forest. Yes, there's a technique to it. It's called the Miyakawa method. There's a wonderful book called Mini Forest Revolution by Hannah Lewis, highly recommended, that gives step-by-step directions. And I have videos on my website at Bridge to Partnership on YouTube. So this is, and you can search YouTube. You don't need Bridge to Partnership necessarily, but I would love to have you visit. So learning how to do the Miyawaki method may actually be much more fun and much more doable if you don't do it all by yourself, but get a few friends or a couple of neighbors to help you. But by planting that forest all in a day, okay, and tending it for 3 years, which means you water it for 3 years. You make sure it has the water it needs for 3 years. You don't do too much else. It's planted very tightly, so it's not really so susceptible to invasion by other invasive species and that kind of stuff. So weeding is really not an issue. It's watering. So you water it for 3 years, and in 3 years, it's self-sustaining. And not only is it self-sustaining, it has brought back all of the original critters that used to live in that place. So the birds and the insects all come back magically. So you're increasing the biodiversity. This is a biotic pump at work. This is well within our means to do. Now, yeah, if you as an individual do it in your backyard, it's great, right? But impact, yeah, well, maybe some. Certainly better than not having it. But yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. It is. But if you got your neighbors to do that, or if a whole city took this on, which is well within the means of a city, then the changes become dramatic. The larger the area that does this, that is consciously reinforcing the biotic pump. And this is not the only thing you do in life. You don't, this is not life consuming. You can do this while you work. You can do this when you have families. You don't have to change your lifestyle to do this necessarily. I would encourage you to change your lifestyle in lots of different ways. That's another podcast. We'll talk about that later. But you can do this now, starting tomorrow, without major changes in your life. A few shifts in priorities, some time changes, yeah, but not huge. We can impact climate change in a major way if we do this at a major level. Now, some cities are starting to do this. They are understanding the need to keep water, not to get rid of it. And they are understanding how to redesign themselves so that the water stays in ways that work instead of ways that are problematic. That's where we have agency. We can make that happen. We can ask water to be where we would like it to be instead of trying to get rid of it. And then it just overfloods the infrastructure that we put in there, because we can't design it to hold the amount of water that we're now getting, but we can design to hold that water. Davis, California has a town called Village Homes. It's a subdivision of 360 or some odd homes. It was built in 1974, so it's almost 50 years old. I guess it is 50 years old now. And it was designed this way. They got 5 inches of rain in a day and had no flooding because the land is designed to hold water. And after 50 years of this, their soil is rich. It is feet deep. The plant roots go down feet because they've been able to go down feet because the soil accommodates their growth. It's alive. We did not get into this fix in 2 years. We've been working at it for hundreds of years. So to think that what you do today is going to suddenly stop it is crazy thinking. That doesn't happen. However, if we start now to really reinforce the biotic pump, to create the soil that's able to manage the changes that we're going through in a gentler way, that is able to support us in going through this. When you have the biotic pump working, you not only have water, you have coolness. Plants and trees create coolness. Shade is cooler. So shading the soil keeps the soil cooler, which keeps the life going, which is beneficial for everybody. It is about cooling the planet. We don't need to put fans in the air. I don't know what other illusions that we have about how to make it cooler instead of allowing the planet to cool itself. It knows how to do this. It's a living being. She's been very good at making this happen in places. We've come in and disrupted her process, cut down trees, created deforestation, and then we get desert. Oh my gosh, surprise. Without plants, you don't have water. When you put the plants back, and this has been proven worldwide, that people have reactivated the biotic pump where they are. And guess what? That space works. The space 10 miles away may not. But doesn't mean it couldn't. It just means I have to do it there. You have to do it locally. And we have to do it. There's nobody going to do it for us. That is our contribution. Right now, that's our work to do. It's how we fit in with the natural world, is by facilitating the biotic pump wherever we can. That will give us the space to begin to rethink all these other things that we need to do, all the stops that need to happen, all the slowing down that needs to happen. If we could do that fast enough, we may keep some of what we've done. If we don't, we'll lose almost everything. I can't see how it will stay around. There just won't be enough people. There won't be enough capacity to do that. We can do this, but we have to understand we're part of the living system, and we need to support that living system. That's what we need to work on, not each other, not band-aid the effects. Those are not going to stop the bleeding. We need to stop the bleeding. We need to cool the planet. We need to help the planet cool itself, because that's the planet. That's the way it works. We don't do it. We can help it already happen. We can't make it happen ourselves. That's where separation kills us. Thinking that we can do it, thinking that we have to deal with all the symptoms instead of actually helping the planet do its own work. Nature knows how to do this. Gaia gets it. We need to get out of her way and help her to become part of her system instead of fighting it or ignoring it or resisting it. We need to be reconnected. I'm here to tell you, when you start reconnecting with nature, it's a spiritual experience. This is a whole system, folks. Body, mind, spirit, and emotions all work together in a wonderful way to make this happen. But it is going to require hands in the dirt for quite a few years if we want to stay around to figure out how to get through this. You want to put water on that fire. And the only way to have water is with soil. So soil is the path out of this predicament, I do predict. And beginning to value and rever the incredible richness that is there. There's so much life there. So little we know about the soil we stand on. It's a shame. We can do this. The Biotic Pump. So check out the website, soilsmart, soilwise.com. for things that you as a city, you as a resident, and yes, you as developers can do to bring forth a world that thrives, that we all want to be in, that begins to sing of life, the song of life. Life loves life. She wants us to be here. She wants us to continue. What a joy, what a thrill, what a privilege it is to be able to be a part of life, to know that what we've done has helped make life happen, keep life on the planet. It is just wonderful to see life thrive. The blossoms in spring, newborn critters. I mean, our heart just opens to that. That's what we want to see more of. AI, maybe, if it helps make those happen. And if it doesn't, it's really not that important. But if we forget that that's what we want it to do, it won't do it. It will only do what we say we want. Form follows function. And it's the intent that creates it all. So if we want more life, if we want life, if we want to live, then we need to support life in every way we can. And the biotic pump is the perfect solution for this time, to give us the time and space we need to see the complete complexity of what we're dealing with, and to watch it as it unfolds and be able to interact with it in a way that's positive and keeps things happening. We'll learn a lot if we just pay attention to the biotic pump. So what do you say? On your way, go to the store, go get a shovel, and think about, learn about biochar, learn to compost. Not difficult at all. Find a place to put all that garbage. You can do that this evening. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's cool the planet together and then see what life is asking us to do. Talk to you soon.